In the vast, open landscapes of the American West, a powerful symbol of freedom roams, the wild Mustang. These magnificent horses, descendants of those brought by the Spanish, have captured our hearts for generations. But today, their very existence is at the center of a fierce and emotional debate. Every year, the sound of helicopter blades shatters the peace of the range, as thousands of these wild horses are chased and removed from public lands. What's really going on out there? Why is this happening? This is the story of America's wild horse war. To understand the present, we have to look back. The story of wild horses is woven into the fabric of American history. They carried explorers, ranchers, and pioneers across the frontier. For centuries, they thrived. But the West has changed. In 1971, public outcry over their declining numbers led to the passage of the Wild Free-Roaming Horses and Burros Act. This landmark law was designed to protect them as living symbols of the historic and pioneer spirit of the West. The Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, was tasked with their protection and management on public rangelands. It seemed like a victory for the Mustangs. So, why are we now seeing images of terrifying helicopter roundups? The core of the issue boils down to a single word: numbers. The BLM manages nearly 27 million acres designated for wild horses and burros. They set what's called an appropriate management level, or ANL. This is the number of horses the agency believes the land can sustainably support without causing damage to the ecosystem. Today, the BLM estimates there are over 80,000 wild horses and burros on the range. So, what does an overpopulated range look like? The concern is ecological damage. Too many horses in one area can lead to overgrazing. Native vegetation gets stripped bare, leaving the soil vulnerable to erosion. Water sources, which are scarce in the arid West, can be depleted or damaged. This doesn't just affect the horses. It impacts all wildlife that shares the habitat, from pronghorn antelope and mule deer to sage grouse. The BLM's position is that the roundups, which they call gathers, are a necessary, evil, and difficult but essential tool to prevent widespread starvation, dehydration, and long-term destruction of the public lands they are sworn to protect. It's a complex ecological balancing act, and they believe removing excess animals is the only viable solution currently available. But how are these roundups actually conducted? The primary method is the helicopter-assisted gather. Pilots, skilled in low-level flying, use the aircraft to guide herds of horses over long distances towards strategically placed trap sites. These are typically a series of camouflaged, jute-covered fences that funnel the running horses into a holding corral. From the air, the helicopter acts like a modern-day sheepdog, steering the bands of horses, separating them and pushing them toward the capture point. The process can be stressful and exhausting for the animals, often covering many miles of rugged terrain at high speeds. While the BLM has protocols in place to ensure animal welfare, such as resting the horses and providing water, the method itself remains highly controversial. Critics and wild horse advocates paint a very different picture. They argue the roundups are brutal, inhumane, and unnecessary. They point to the terror the horses experience, the risk of injury as they panic and run, and the permanent separation of tight-knit family bands. Foals can be separated from their mothers, and the social structure of the herd is shattered forever. Activist groups document instances of injury and death that occur during these operations, challenging the narrative that they are conducted safely. They believe the sight of helicopters chasing down these symbols of wild freedom is a betrayal of the 1971 Act's original spirit. For them, this isn't management. It's a traumatic and cruel removal of a protected species from its rightful home. So, If the Roundups are so controversial, what are the alternatives? The biggest push from advocacy groups is for fertility control. Programs using a vaccine called PCP have shown to be effective in slowing population growth. The vaccine, which can be administered remotely via darting, makes a male temporarily infertile without affecting her health or social behaviors. Advocates argue that a large-scale, dedicated fertility control program would be a more humane and cost-effective long-term solution than the endless cycle of roundups and holding. They propose that if the BLM invested the same resources into darting programs as they do into gathers, the populations could be managed on the range, without the need for removals. However, the BLM contends that while they do use fertility control, it's not a magic bullet. Darting thousands of horses across millions of acres of remote, rugged terrain is a monumental logistical challenge. It's labor-intensive, expensive, and requires repeated application to be effective. They argue that in areas with large, inaccessible herds, it's simply not practical as the sole management tool. They maintain that to bring the population down to the target AML, removals are still necessary, and fertility control can then be used to help maintain that level once it's achieved. This disagreement over the scalability and effectiveness of fertility control is a major sticking point in the debate. Another significant part of this conflict is the use of public lands. The areas where wild horses roam are designated as multi-use lands. This means they aren't just for horses. They are also used for livestock grazing, mining, recreation, and energy development. A major criticism from horse advocates is that private livestock, primarily cattle, and sheep, vastly outnumber wild horses on public lands, yet it's the horses that are targeted for removal. They argue that the AML for horses is set artificially low to prioritize commercial interests, especially livestock grazing. They ask, is the range truly overpopulated with horses, or is there simply not enough room for them alongside millions of privately owned cattle? Once the horses are removed from the range, what happens to them? They are transported to off-range corrals and holding facilities. Here, they are sorted, vaccinated, and freeze-branded with a unique identification number. The younger, more desirable horses are put up for adoption. The BLM's adoption program aims to place these Mustangs into good private homes. Thousands of horses are successfully adopted each year by people willing to take on the challenge of training a wild animal. However, the number of horses removed far exceeds the number of adopters. This has created a crisis. Tens of thousands of older, unadoptable wild horses now live out their lives in long-term holding pastures, funded by taxpayers at a cost of hundreds of millions of dollars each year. The wild horse issue is a deeply complex puzzle with no easy answers. It is a clash of powerful values, the freedom of the wild Mustang versus the health of the Western ecosystem. It's a debate over scientific management, animal welfare, and the competing uses of our public lands. On one side, you have a government agency tasked with an incredibly difficult balancing act, using the tools they believe are necessary. On the other, you have passionate advocates fighting to protect an American icon from what they see as a brutal and unjust system. The future of the wild Mustang hangs in the balance, caught between the open range and the holding pen. As we continue to debate their fate, the helicopters keep flying. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please share this video to raise awareness. What do you think is the right solution for America's wild horses? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the important issues shaping our world.